Outward is an open-world RPG game developed by Canadian studio 9 Dots. One of the most immersive RPG games in the last few years, this game really does not spoon-feed you at all, so you're pretty much thrown very deep into the game from the get-go. In this review, I not only go over the gameplay, but also some of the co-op elements of the game and my thoughts around it. After doing an entire playthrough co-op as well as solo, I wanted to share my thoughts on both sides of the fence so you have a better understanding if you want to head into the game solo or duo. Before I start, as a reminder, if you're new to the channel, please leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss out on future gaming content and reviews. Alright, let's get into it. I always start my co-op reviews talking about the setup. Many games out there have had a plague of issues when trying to set up co-op, or at least play online. Now, being honest, Outward isn't the cleanest around this area. I can't give my direct opinion on the split screen co-op, but normal co-op online is relatively easy to first set up. All you need to do is press open world to your friend and then click on a server and then create any server name. You can even then invite your friend in, or they can simply join via Steam if you're playing on Steam. Now, yes, we've ran into some issues with co-op. Some have included resetting items, some include rejoining player worlds. We've found fixes for both, but there are definitely still bugs in present. In my opinion, Outward setup does have a few bugs in it, but in my opinion, it's still pretty easy to set up and pretty easy to execute. So I don't think it causes that much of an issue, but if you are a stick or pickle for this stuff, then it might give you a bit of headache. Okay, so going through the entire gameplay could take hours, so I'm going to try to condense it into 3 parts: the combat, the world, and kind of miscellaneous. Let's start off with combat. When starting off, you don't really get a chance to choose a class or create a class like you could in a normal RPG game. You don't have a leveling up system nor a way to spec into certain traits like some RPG games have, including for example intelligence, strength, etc. Instead, what the game offers is simplistic but makes sense. Outward isn't meant for you to be the overarching badass that can one-shot every boss in the game at the end. There are ways to cheese in this game, but overall you're really just a nobody, to be honest, trying their best to make it in the world of Outward. The game has pretty simple combat mechanics, mainly encompassing standard things like melee, range, and mage. Your gear usually determines what kind of build you're going with. For example, if you're going with a mage build, you will need equipment that is mana focused, and you will need to sacrifice some HP to get mana at one stage of the game, for example. Now, some people do complain about the difficulty of the game, but with careful planning and using some dirty tactics here and there, you're able to combat most mobs in the game. That being said, the combat can be something that some people may not enjoy. There are many RPG games out there with a well-defined combat system, especially those that come from a AAA studio. But Outward's combat is pretty simple. Most of the time you're trying to block attacks or dodge attacks and then you're striking back. You have certain mechanics like impact that allow you to knock down opponents if you eventually wither down an opponent's stability bar, but overall these are combat mechanics you're pretty much just going to face. The main difference in combat with a duo partner as well as playing solo is the ability to juggle aggro. As a solo player, you don't have this luxury and most of the times you have to play a bit more dirty to get the job done. As a co-op player, you have this luxury, and this is actually, to be honest, kind of broken in the game. If you have good coordination, you can probably beat anyone in this game, although there are a few mobs that do destroy both of you at the same time. Even though there isn't a mechanic to technically tune the difficulty, by playing with a partner, you're pretty much making the game easier for yourself. I know some people find the combat a bit clunky, but to be honest, I found it kinda enjoyable, and it did remind me a bit of Dark Souls as well. Okay, so the world's pretty big in this game. It is open world, so if you want to skip certain parts of the world, you're pretty much allowed. The only thing to note is that there are certain quests that have a timeline, so make sure you don't do world exploration during those times. You start off in Chersonese, and there are 3 additional areas including Endmarker Forest, Hallowed Marsh, and Abrasa to visit. With a DLC you can add a 4th, but I'm just talking about the base game for now. Okay, so we've got the point that the world is pretty vast and there's a lot of content, especially for an indie studio to have come up with. However, if you're expecting a AAA world experience, you're going to be slightly disappointed. A lot of the world is kind of empty, which in my opinion adds to the game's feels, but I can also understand why some people might be turned off. As many of you know, Outward is kind of memed as a walking simulator, or press shift simulator. This means you're spending a lot of time running between cities for quests as well as exploration. There is no fast travel in this game, so make sure you're ready for this. This means you must plan your travel so you don't waste time going backwards and forwards for no reason. If you don't, you might get slightly burnt out. In my opinion, over time for certain quest lines, the back and forwards does get a bit tiring, so I can understand some people's frustrations. This is why, in my opinion, you should be clearing zone by zone so you don't rush ahead and then end up needing to backtrack and get burnt out from the travel. This also means that traveling with a partner is actually pretty good to have, because at least then you're not bored of your mind traveling by yourself. However, there is an auto walk button, so you could theoretically just watch some Netflix as you auto walk if you're by yourself. Some quests focus on certain areas and cities, and there's a bit of world building, so it is pretty fun as you explore the map. Okay, so I didn't really know what to put this kind of section, so I'm just calling it miscellaneous, where I kind of discuss not only the co-op components again, but also the music. First thing is, the music is brilliant. Especially the soundtrack that was composed by, I think this is how you pronounce it, but Jean-Francois Raquin. This music is just, especially the Hallowed Marsh, it's just brilliant. It really got me through those long walks, so if you're watching this video, thank you very much. Now, the co-op. I did want to kind of raise the co-op part again because this video was kind of discussing the co-op elements. I did discuss the combat mechanics in the co-op setting, but I also wanted to discuss the overall impact co-op has again. Firstly, loot is not randomized for both players. You have to discuss with your partner what exactly you're going to be looting, and like my playthrough, you're going to be fighting over the loot, so especially if it's just junk you want to sell. It's obviously pretty common sense to separate your builds so you don't have to fight over the same loot. Secondly, there are basic co-op mechanics like being able to revive your teammate, but overall there isn't much interaction between the two players, and in my opinion, you're kinda like two solo players playing duo together. This might turn some people off who expect more co-op mechanics, but in my opinion, I think this game kinda just fits it overall together like this style. Okay, so the conclusion, is this game worth it? The simple answer is, in my opinion, yes, it is. There's a lot of gameplay hours in this game, and to be honest, co-op makes the game a lot more fun. There are some bugs that I ran into, but there's always been a fix that I'm able to find on the Outward Wiki and Discord. In my opinion, there is also a lot of replayability in this game, as there are different quest lines that kind of lock you in one pathway, so you can always replay the game with the other quest lines. The game also has a very nice, just warm touch to it, and I can understand some people might be a bit put off by all the walking or a bit of janky combat, but in my opinion, the game still matches my expectation in a good RPG game, especially one that supports co-op, right? How hard is it to find a good RPG game that has co-op these days? So yeah, in my opinion, just go for it. Alright guys, thanks for checking out my Outward co-op review. Don't forget to leave a sub and like for future reviews and Outward content. See you next time.